Nicole Kidman has outlasted Hollywood trends, scandals, and the relentless scrutiny that has ended countless careers long before their time. For more than 4 decades, she has faced headlines that would have shattered many people. Yet every chapter only seemed to strengthen her resilience. At 58, very little could surprise her anymore. But on this particular morning, only days after making a celebrated return to the Oscars, she stepped onto the set of The View, unaware that Joy Behar had no intention of celebrating her achievements. Instead, every painful chapter of Nicole's life was lined up for inspection. Her reported divorce from Keith Urban, her relationship with her older children, the controversial film that divided critics, even the constant speculation about her changing appearance. Nothing was off limits. Joy arrived prepared with every tabloid accusation she could find, convinced she could dismantle one of Hollywood's most respected actresses piece by piece. But what she failed to realize was that the woman sitting across from her had spent 40 years mastering something far more powerful than clever headlines. She had learned how to face cruelty disguised as curiosity without ever surrendering her composure. And what happened next reminded everyone exactly why Nicole Kidman has remained untouchable for so long. If you're enjoying stories like this, make sure to subscribe and leave your thoughts below, because the next few moments revealed a side of Nicole that few people ever get to witness. The atmosphere inside The View felt unusually electric as she walked onto the stage. At 58, she carried herself with the same timeless elegance that first captivated audiences decades earlier. Her soft strawberry blonde hair framed a calm, confident smile, and every step reflected the quiet confidence of someone who had earned every ounce of respect she received. This appearance carried extra significance. It was her first major television interview after returning to the Academy Awards for the first time since 2023, and also her first high-profile public appearance following reports of her divorce filing from Keith Urban just months earlier. Every photograph from the Oscars had already been dissected online. Every smile, every glance, every interaction with her Moulin Rouge co-star, Ewan McGregor, had become the subject of endless debate. Some insisted there was flirtation. Others saw nothing more than 2 seasoned professionals sharing a stage. While the internet argued over fleeting moments, Nicole remained focused on what truly mattered: her career, which continued reaching remarkable new heights despite the deeply personal challenges unfolding behind the scenes. Scarpetta had just debuted on Prime Video. Practical Magic 2 alongside Sandra Bullock was already generating enormous anticipation for its upcoming release. Lioness was moving confidently into its 3rd season, and she had been selected as one of the prestigious co-chairs of the Met Gala with Beyoncé, at an age when many actresses are unfairly pushed aside by the industry. Nicole seemed busier than ever, proving that talent and determination could outlast every Hollywood stereotype. Whoopi Goldberg welcomed her with genuine warmth. Sarah Haynes couldn't hide her excitement, and the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation that stretched for nearly a full minute. Even Joy Behar smiled politely, though longtime viewers recognized the familiar expression behind it, a look that suggested she was already planning her first attack. "Nicole Kidman, welcome back to The View," Whoopi said as the applause finally settled. "You look incredible, and we're so happy you're here." Nicole smiled graciously. "Thank you, Whoopi. It's wonderful to be back. This show always feels like visiting family." Sarah eagerly steered the conversation toward Nicole's newest project. "Let's talk about Scarpetta. You're bringing one of crime fiction's most beloved characters to life. Patricia Cornwell's novels have sold millions around the world. How did you prepare for such an iconic role?" Nicole's face immediately brightened. Scarpetta is extraordinary because she's dedicated her life to giving a voice to people who can no longer speak for themselves. She's constantly surrounded by humanity at its darkest, yet she never loses her compassion. I spent time with real forensic pathologists, toured morgues, and watched how they balance such emotionally demanding work while protecting their own humanity. Without question, it's one of the most demanding roles I've ever accepted. But before the conversation could continue, everything shifted. "Speaking of demanding," Joy interrupted, and almost instantly the mood across the studio changed. The warmth disappeared, replaced by a tension everyone could feel. Let's discuss your personal life instead. You recently went through a very public divorce from Keith Urban after 19 years together. Before that, your marriage to Tom Cruise also ended in divorce. That's two highly visible relationships that couldn't survive. At what point do you begin wondering whether the common denominator might actually be you? The words hit the room with stunning force. Sarah's expression froze in disbelief. Whoopi's smile vanished completely. Yet Nicole barely moved. Only the slightest tightening around her eyes hinted that the question had landed exactly where Joy intended. After a brief pause, Nicole answered with remarkable calm. That's certainly a direct way to begin, Joy. I appreciate honesty. Joy leaned forward. I'm only asking what viewers at home are already thinking. Nicole held her gaze. Are they? Or is that simply what tabloid headlines have encouraged people to believe? She paused for a moment before continuing, her voice measured but unmistakably firm. Every relationship has its own story. Every ending has reasons that outsiders rarely understand. I shared 11 years of my life with Tom, and together we raised 2 wonderful children. Keith and I shared 19 years together while raising 2 beautiful daughters. Those years weren't failures. They were decades filled with love, family, memories, and growth. Just because something ends doesn't erase everything meaningful that came before it. But Joy wasn't ready to let go. Still, doesn't that point toward a pattern? 2 marriages ending the same way. Reports claim Keith was blindsided. Others say neither of you wanted this, but couldn't save it. We've also heard your daughters have been supporting you while Keith is facing a difficult period in his life. So what keeps going wrong? Nicole remained silent for a brief moment, gathering her thoughts before responding with the quiet confidence of someone who had already made peace with herself. Joy, I'll answer this once, and I genuinely hope you'll hear what I'm saying. I'm not going to discuss the private details of my marriage on national television. What I will say is that Keith and I spent 19 years building a beautiful life together. We have 2 daughters who mean everything to both of us, and regardless of what has changed, we will always be a family. Everything beyond that belongs to us, not to the public. Joy immediately challenged her again. But don't people deserve an explanation? You celebrated your anniversary publicly. You shared photographs that made everything seem perfect. Then just 3 months later, you filed for divorce. Surely you owe people some honesty. Nicole's expression never changed, but her words carried far greater force this time. Owe them? She repeated softly. No, Joy. I don't owe anyone access to the most intimate parts of my marriage. People are welcome to judge my performances, critique my films, or discuss my work. That's part of my profession. But what happened inside our home? Inside our hearts? Over 19 years. That belongs to Keith and me. The public has every right to my career. They do not have a right to my pain. The audience became completely silent, hanging on to every word. Joy shifted uncomfortably in her chair, clearly realizing that the confrontation wasn't unfolding the way she had imagined. Searching for another angle, she changed direction. Let's talk about your children instead. Isabella and Connor, your 2 adult children from your marriage to Tom Cruise, have remained deeply connected to Scientology, and reports suggest your relationship with them has become distant. As a mother, that must be incredibly painful. For the first time all morning, Nicole's composure showed the faintest crack. The mention of her older children reached somewhere much deeper. But only for a moment. She steadied herself and answered with quiet grace. My relationship with Bella and Connor belongs to us. They're adults now, 33 and 31, and they're entitled to make their own choices. I love them deeply. I always will. And because I love them, I respect their privacy enough not to turn our family into entertainment. Joy pressed again. But people are genuinely curious how a mother ends up losing contact with her own children. Nicole looked directly at her without hesitation. I haven't lost them, Joy. Nicole's voice carried a different kind of strength now. The calm warmth was still there, but beneath it was a firmness that couldn't be mistaken. They are my children, she said without hesitation. Whatever people think they see from the outside, they know they are loved. That's the only truth that matters. Not tabloid headlines, not rumors, and certainly not assumptions made on television. What matters is what exists between us. For a brief moment, the room fell quiet. Joy could feel the conversation slipping away, but instead of pulling back, she reached for another headline. Fine, she replied. Let's talk about your latest film, Babygirl. You played a powerful CEO involved with a man almost 30 years younger than you. You were 57 filming intimate scenes with a 28-year-old actor, and a lot of viewers found that uncomfortable. Reports even claimed your own children refused to watch it. The shift was clearly meant to provoke embarrassment, yet Nicole's expression barely changed. If anything, she looked slightly amused. Are you asking whether I regret making a film that explored female desire through a woman's perspective? She asked calmly. Because I don't. Not for a second. Joy immediately pressed harder. But the age difference. Harris Dickinson is nearly 3 decades younger than you. If the genders were reversed, people would be calling it inappropriate. Nicole leaned in just enough to show she wasn't backing away. Would they? She replied. Because I can think of countless films where men in their 60s romance women in their 20s, and nobody treats it like a national scandal. George Clooney, Harrison Ford, Richard Gere. The list goes on. Somehow that's considered normal. But the moment a woman my age tells the same kind of story, people suddenly decide there's a problem. That's a double standard, not a controversy. Joy refused to let the subject go. You have to admit those scenes were extremely graphic. You even said filming became so intense that you had to stop because it was emotionally overwhelming. Nicole nodded without losing her composure. Yes, I said the emotional and physical demands were overwhelming, because that's exactly what happens when an actor commits completely to a role. I've pushed myself to the limit throughout my career. I've collapsed on set. I've needed time to recover emotionally after certain performances. I even broke ribs while filming Moulin Rouge. I poured everything I had into portraying Virginia Woolf in The Hours. That's what dedication to the craft looks like. The fact that Babygirl required vulnerability doesn't make it any less meaningful as art. Joy responded with a faint smirk. Some critics called it excessive. Others described it as a vanity project by an actress trying to prove she's still desirable. The remark lingered in the air for a second, but Nicole's eyes sharpened instead of softening. A vanity project? She repeated. So that's what 40 years of work gets reduced to. Helena Rain created a film that explored female desire, power, identity, and emotional complexity. It asked difficult questions about control and vulnerability. That's storytelling. That's meaningful art. And I'm proud I helped bring that story to life. She continued before Joy could interrupt. The age difference only became controversial because I happened to be the older person. For decades, audiences have accepted older men paired with much younger women without blinking. But when a woman in her 50s is allowed to explore the same emotional territory, suddenly everyone acts shocked. That says far more about society than it does about the film. Nicole's voice remained measured, but every sentence carried increasing confidence. Babygirl is about a woman who spent her entire life appearing strong, successful, and completely in control, yet never gave herself permission to understand her own desires. That's something many women recognize in themselves. Those stories deserve to be told too. Joy tried another angle. You also mentioned filming became overwhelming. Some people thought that sounded dramatic. Nicole answered without hesitation. When you allow yourself to become emotionally exposed for a role, there are consequences. That's true whether you're filming grief, trauma, love, or anything else. I've needed recovery after many performances because I give everything I have to the characters I play. That's not drama. None of the questions were producing the reaction she expected, so she shifted once again. Let's move on. Your appearance has changed over the years. Every time you attend a red carpet, people speculate about cosmetic procedures. Your face looked noticeably different at this year's Oscars. Care to explain? The question was clearly intended to embarrass her, but Nicole answered with remarkable calm. I'm 58 years old, Joy. I've lived in front of cameras since I was 16. Every wrinkle, every hairstyle, every change in my appearance has been photographed, analyzed, and criticized for over 40 years. At different points, I've been told I was too tall, too pale, too thin, too old, and somehow I'm still standing. She gestured gently toward herself. This face has portrayed Virginia Woolf. This face became Lucille Ball. This face carried characters through heartbreak, triumph, fear, and joy. If audiences continue watching my work, it's because of what I bring to those roles, not because strangers spend their time debating whether I've had Botox or anything else. Joy quickly interrupted. So you're not denying you've had work done? Nicole smiled politely. I'm not confirming or denying anything, because it's simply not your business. My face is part of my profession. How I choose to care for it is a private matter, just as your personal choices belong to you. The response landed with perfect precision. For the first time all morning, Joy seemed genuinely unsettled. I'm only asking what viewers want to know, she insisted. Nicole looked directly at her. No, Joy. You're asking questions designed to humiliate. We've discussed my divorces, my children, my appearance, and my body. But you haven't asked about my production company. You haven't asked about the women filmmakers I've supported throughout my career. You haven't asked about the work that actually defines who I am. Her voice became stronger without ever losing control. I've worked in this industry since 1983. I've watched careers disappear overnight. I've seen women my age told they no longer matter while younger faces replace them. Yet I'm still here, not because life has been easy, not because I've been fortunate. I'm here because I've worked relentlessly, embraced difficult roles, taken risks that frightened me, and refused to let other people decide my value. Joy frowned. People like me? Nicole answered without hesitation. People who mistake gossip for journalism. People who believe a woman's face is more interesting than her accomplishments. People who spend more time searching for flaws than celebrating decades of hard work. The studio had become completely silent. Nicole straightened in her chair, somehow appearing even more commanding than when the interview began. You wanted to know why my marriages ended. The answer is simple. Life is complicated. People grow. Sometimes love alone isn't enough to keep two people together forever. That isn't failure. That's simply part of being human. Her voice softened, making her next words even more powerful. And as for my children with Tom, they're adults living their own lives. I love them enough to protect their privacy instead of turning them into material for a television segment. That's not estrangement, Nicole said, her voice steady but unmistakably stronger than before. That's motherhood. She paused just long enough for the words to settle before continuing. And if you want to talk about Babygirl, then let's talk about it honestly. I accepted that role because it frightened me. It challenged every instinct I had and demanded more vulnerability than I'd ever shown before. That's what artists are supposed to do. We evolve. We take risks. We refuse to let fear, or other people's expectations, decide what stories we're allowed to tell, no matter how old we are. Then something changed. Nicole slowly rose from her chair, and the simple movement instantly transformed the atmosphere. Everyone in the studio sensed this conversation had reached its breaking point. And since you're so interested in my face, she continued, this face has laughed, cried, aged, healed, and lived its life in front of millions of people. For over 40 years, it's been photographed, criticized, dissected, and turned into headlines. I'm no longer interested in apologizing for what time has done or what life has taught me, and I'm certainly finished explaining my existence to people whose greatest achievement is creating controversy instead of creating something meaningful. Joy attempted to interrupt, but Nicole calmly raised a hand, stopping her before another word could escape. I came here today to talk about my work. I came to celebrate Scarpetta, to share my excitement about Practical Magic 2, and to discuss the incredible opportunities I'm still fortunate enough to have at 58 years old. Instead, this conversation became an interrogation about my marriage, my children, my body, and my appearance. That says far more about this program than it ever could about me. Without rushing, she reached for her microphone and carefully removed it. Every movement was controlled, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. I've survived experiences that would have broken many people, she continued quietly. I've lived through divorce, public humiliation, endless tabloid speculation, and decades of having strangers dissect every decision I've ever made. Yet here I am. I'm still working. I'm still creating. And I'm still standing. Then she looked directly at Joy, and her next words landed with stunning precision. Tell me something, Joy. What have you survived? What have you built? When people look back years from now, what will they remember you for? Because I know exactly what my legacy is. I'm not convinced you can say the same. Joy opened her mouth as if searching for a response, but nothing came. For perhaps the first time during her years on The View, she appeared completely unable to answer. Nicole simply turned away. Her heels echoed across the studio floor with calm, measured confidence as she walked toward the exit. She never looked back because she didn't need to. Every step reflected the certainty of someone who knew exactly who she was and no longer needed anyone else's approval. The studio remained frozen in silence. Whoopi Goldberg covered her face with both hands. Sarah Haynes looked visibly emotional, struggling to hold back tears. Alyssa Farah Griffin stared at the now empty chair, where Nicole had been sitting only moments earlier, while Joy remained motionless behind the desk, somehow looking far smaller than she had when the interview began. The woman famous for always having the final word had finally encountered someone who left her with nothing to say. Behind the scenes, producers were already scrambling as calls poured in from network executives. Every camera had captured every second, every accusation, every attempt to provoke, every calm, composed response that gradually dismantled the interview piece by piece. But what happened after the broadcast proved even more extraordinary. Within hours, clips spread across social media at breathtaking speed. Headlines declared that Nicole Kidman had answered hostility with grace, and millions of viewers praised the quiet confidence with which she defended herself. Her words about surviving, creating, and refusing to apologize resonated with women of every generation who had ever been reduced to their appearance instead of recognized for their accomplishments. One particular line seemed to echo everywhere. The public has a right to my work, not my pain. It was shared millions of times across every major platform and quickly became the defining moment of the interview. The following day, Joy returned to The View without directly acknowledging what had happened. When criticism intensified, she defended herself by insisting the questions were fair for a public figure. Instead of calming the situation, those comments only fueled the backlash as more viewers revisited the interview and focused on Nicole's measured, thoughtful responses. Complaints flooded the network, and reports suggested several sponsors quietly distanced themselves from the controversial segment. Messages of support soon followed from people who knew Nicole best. Sandra Bullock, her longtime friend and Practical Magic 2 co-star, shared a heartfelt message celebrating the woman she'd known for decades, calling her someone whose grace outweighed almost anyone else's and expressing how excited she was to create magic together once again. Reese Witherspoon also praised Nicole, saying she never needed to justify herself because her work, her character, and her dignity had already spoken louder than any question designed to diminish her. Even Keith Urban, despite the reported end of their marriage, released a respectful statement recognizing Nicole as the mother of his children and saying the interview reminded him why he had fallen in love with her in the first place. He added that some parts of life should always remain sacred and that not every question deserves to be asked publicly. Patricia Cornwell, whose beloved Scarpetta character Nicole had recently brought to life, also voiced her admiration, writing that she had chosen Nicole because she understood what it meant to give a voice to those who couldn't speak for themselves, and that on this day she had spoken for countless women who had been reduced to gossip, instead of recognized for their humanity. While the internet continued debating the interview, Nicole quietly returned to what she had always done best. She went back to filming Lioness in Texas, prepared for the Met Gala alongside Beyoncé, supported Sunday Rose as her modeling career continued to grow, cherished time with Faith Margaret, and kept moving forward with a career that showed no signs of slowing down despite decades of relentless public scrutiny. That had always been her greatest strength. She never allowed the noise to become louder than the work itself. She simply kept showing up, kept creating, and kept proving that resilience speaks far louder than revenge. In the end, that was the real Nicole Kidman, not a collection of tabloid headlines, not a woman defined by divorce, not an actress chasing relevance, but someone who arrived in Hollywood from Sydney, built one of the most respected careers in modern cinema on her own terms, and refused to let anyone else decide her worth. And perhaps her greatest statement wasn't delivered through words at all. It was the quiet confidence to know exactly when to stand up and exactly when to walk away. So what do you think? Did Joy Behar cross the line, or was she simply asking difficult questions? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable stories that reveal what really happens when the cameras keep rolling.